Kakadosh Boker Tov. We're going to be continuing with Daf Zayin Amud Bet, which is 67b at the top of the page, right? Mamash, the first line, where it says, Rabba and Rav Yosef Damri Tarvayu. So Rabba and Rav Yosef both said, Nochri, when we have a goy that's living in a mavui, and again, he has an entrance towards the karpaf. So if you remember, we had this concept that he had a little tiny small entrance, whether it could be even 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, going into like a storage place of wood. Okay, so he says, if it's only going to be bet satayim, which means the size of this karpaf is going to be bet satayim, right, or less, so then he's going to prohibit, right? Why? Because the shimush in such a small karpaf, right, is, he says over here, is noach lo yoter shimush b'mavui. Okay, so he says, yoter mi bet satayim eno sebe. If it's going to be more than a bet satayim, then it's not going to prohibit. Okay, the Yisrael. Now, what happens if the Jew lives in a mavui and he's got this entrance to the karpaf and he forgot to make the eruv? So the deen is now the opposite of what we just mentioned before. If it's going to be a bet satayim or less, eno said it's not going to prohibit on anybody else. Why? Because basically, just as like this Jew is not going to take out anything big, for him it's enough the small karpaf. So therefore, it's better to use the karpaf more than the mavui. If it's more than a bet satayim, it's going to be osir. Okay, it's going to prohibit. Okay, so it's the exact opposite by the Jew and what we said about to do with the goy. Okay, so ba mineh Rava bar Chaklai min Rav Huna. So asks Rava bar Chaklai from Rav Huna, patuach lekarpaf mahu. What's halacha if it's going to be open to a karpaf? Okay, so what's halacha? Meaning if the house of the goy is open to a karpaf, what's halacha? Amalei, he says, Hare Amru, we just said it. What do you mean what's halacha? We just said if it's going to be a bet satayim or less, it's going to prohibit. If it's more than bet satayim, it's not going to prohibit that whatsoever. So Amar Ulam, Rabbi Yochanan says, Ulam name Rabbi Yochanan, Karpaf yoter mi bet satayim shelo ukaf ledira, va'afilu kor va'afilu koraim, va'azorek letocho chayav. He says, no, really we're talking about what happens if you have a karpaf that's more than a bet satayim. But it's mukaf mechitzot, it's got mechitzot, meaning it's got the walls around it, but there's nobody that lives there. So even if it's going to be big, like a kur, or kuraim, which is 2 kurs, which means it's a huge amount of space, yeah? Here it says it's like 75,000 amot squared, right? That's a bet kur. Okay, so imagine, right? Every single amma is 48 centimeters. So 75,000 times 48 centimeters. You know, we're talking about a big amount of space. Okay, so he says, still it's considered a reshut yachid. Since nobody lives there, and it's mukaf mechitzot, you've got mechitzot all around it. Ve'azorek letocho, somebody that's going to come and throw inside of it on Shabbat, he's going to be chayav chatat. My tama, what's the reasoning? Mechitzahi, because at the end of the day, it's considered a mechitza. Ela shemechuseret dayurim, but it's just lacking people living there. So again, one more time, we're on 67b. Okay, and in 67b, we just said that if right now the goy has his little tiny opening into the karpaf, so we were talking about, does that prohibit on the other Jews or not? So now what we just said is that a karpaf that is more than a bet satayim, that is more than that it has the space of 2 seas, but it is mukaf mechitzot, but not mukaf ledira, which means it's got the walls, but there's nobody that actually lives there. So you're going to be chayav. What's the reasoning? Because it's considered a mechitza, but it's just lacking people living there. Which means that the concept of actually carrying inside of it is going to be, it's going to be considered mina Torah, right? And if it was to do with carrying inside arba amot, it's only going to be like a karmelit, midrabanan, because at the end of the day, it does have walls. Okay, fine. So now the Gemara is going to ask, Mativ Rav Huna bar Chinana. So Rav Huna bar Chinana comes and he asks the following question. And the question that he asks is as follows. Sorry. Here it is. Okay, everyone has a picture? This is picture 610. Okay, so it says, Mativ Rav Huna bar Chinana, Sela shebayam. When you have a stone in the middle of the sea. Sorry,
Pillar.
here it is. This type of a stone.
No, that's a pillar.
A pillar. Yeah. Okay. A sela, it's a pillar, but it's a stone. You've got this stone in the middle of, right, the sea. Okay. Sela shebayam gavoa asara v'rochav arba'a. So it's 10 tfachim tall, and you've got 4 by 4.
Coming out of the water.
Coming out of the water, yeah. Okay. So it says over here, arba'a em metaltelin lo min tocho layam v'lo min hayam tocho. You cannot be metaltel, not from the yam into this, big stone, right? This thing, or the other way around. Because it's like a karmelit. And the sela is considered like a reshut yachid. Okay? Pachot mikan, but if it's going to be less than the 10 tfachim, so then metaltalin, you are allowed to. Ad kama. How big could it be that you're able to come and carry within it? Ad betzatayim, until betzatayim. This is the next picture. I mean, here, as long as it's not going to be 10 tfachim tall, I don't know, from this picture, it looks like a mountain, but...
it's like a
yeah, exactly, yeah. But obviously here we're talking about that it's less than 10 tfachim tall. So I don't know, they probably, the picture should have been like more drawn out.
Here.
Yeah. Yeah. But basically what happens is that this is a betzatayim. So if it's going to be more than a betzatayim, it's going to be a problem. If it's going to be less than a betzatayim, it's still going to be okay. Fine. So says the Gemara, hi. On which deen are we going back on? Ile Masechta. If you're going to tell me that we're going back on the second deen, which means that you're allowed to be mitaltel between the yam and the sela, which means between the sea and the stone, right? Which is going to be less than 10 tfachim, right? Why? Because both of them are going to be considered a karmelit. Bet satayim tfei lo. So it's going to be only in a bet satayim, but more than that, no. But you're just carrying it from one karmelit to another karmelit. At the end of the day, it's only from one karmelit to another. They're all the rabbanans. They're not the raitas here. Okay? Everyone sees the picture, yeah? You see the betzatayim, the one in front of me.
Yes.
Okay. This is the next one, Yenuka. Right? So it says elalav, but rather areisha. It's going on the first part. V'haki kamar. This is what it means to say. Sela shebayam. When you have a stone in the middle of the sea, gavoa asara, and it's going to be 10 tfachim tall. V'rochav arba'a, and it's going to be 4 by 4 tfachim. En metaltelin lo mitocho liyam v'lo min hayam mitocho. You're not allowed to be metaltel, not from the sea to inside of this stone, or not from the stone to the sea. V'ad kama, until when? A betzatayim. But if it's going to be more than a betzatayim, you are allowed to. Almas, you see here, karmeliti, that it is a karmeliti, it's not a reshut yachid. So you go even lenient. So tiyufta Rabbi Yochanan, there's again a tiyufta against Rabbi Yochanan, because basically what happened is that never, right, will a reshut yachid come and be mitpatel from the karpath. So therefore, so too here. Here, what's happening is that at the end of the day, this is a karmelit. So since this is a karmelit, even if it's going to be more, as long as it's got its mechitzot, it's okay. So Amar Rava comes and he answers, no. Man de lo yada tirutze matniata. He says something that doesn't know how to answer the brightot. Tiyufta moti the Rabbi Yochanan is going to come and is going to ask this question against Rabbi Yochanan. Leolam reisha. Really, we're talking about on the reisha. Vehachi kamer. This is what it means to say. So what is a reisha? We're going like this. Sela shabayam. We're talking about a stone in the middle of the sea. It's going to be 10 tfachim tall, 80 centimeters tall, and 32 centimeters square, the width and the length. So he says, you're not allowed to carry you not from one to another. Okay, so now what are you going to say? But within it, metaltelim, for sure you're allowed to. Meaning within the stone itself, for sure you could be metaltel. Bad kama, until when can you be metaltel on the stone? So he says a betzatayim, until betzatayim. So you see from here, right, that if it's going to be more than a betzatayim, you're not allowed to be metaltel. Why? Because it's lacking people living there, and it's like a reshut rabim, and therefore it's going to be like a karmelit. So therefore, it's not a question against Rabbi Yochanan, but Rabbi Yochanan was talking about Isul Tiltul between Reshut Yachid, right, and Reshut Rabim. Here, we're not talking about that. So Rav Ashi is going to give another answer. Rav Ashi says, Leolam Reisha. Really, we're going on in the Reisha. Hen Amru ve'hen Amru. But really, the rabbis were the ones that said it, and the rabbis were the ones that said it. What does that mean? Remember, since they were the ones that made the decree, they were the ones allowed to null it. Since this is all the Rabbanans, they were allowed to permit it. So it says, Hen Amru, they were the ones that said, Karpaf yoter mi betzatayim shelu kaf emetaltelim bo l-400. That if you have a karpaf, remember the karpaf is a wood storage place. That's more than a betzatayim. Okay, that's more than a certain measurement. That's not mukaf ladira, that does not have houses inside of it. You're not allowed to carry inside of it only for amot, because if not, people are going to think it's like a reshut rabim. And they permitted that there's not going to be that you're not allowed to come and that's what it says here, to be mitatel and reshut yachid to reshut rabim. They said that this is not the reshut yachid, which is more than a betzatayim shelo kaf ladira, and therefore betzatayim. When you have a betzatayim that you're allowed to carry within the entire area, asur rabbanon to do this, and then the rabbi said it's prohibited. Not from the sea to it or to it to the sea. My time, what's reasoning? Reshut yachid gemurahi, because it's considered 100% a reshut yachid. Ve'yater rayater mi betzatayim, if it's going to be more than betzatayim.
The stone.
Yeah. Okay, it's like a reshut yachid gemurah. So therefore, he said, but if it's more than betzatayim, you're not allowed to come and carry in the entire area. Then they did permit to carry within it.
I don't understand why. If it is bigger, it should be better.
But that's what he's trying to say. He's saying if it's going to be more than a betzatayim, the isur is only midrabbanan, right? It's not the right anymore. So since it's only going to be midrabbanan, the rabbis themselves, they prohibited it and they permitted it. My time, I was reasoning. Dilma amre reshut yachid gemurahi. Because maybe they're going to say that even the Rabbanan, it's not a Carmelit. And then they're going to carry inside of it. So therefore, it's going to take away the first original Gizirah. Which means, one more time, what was the concept of the Hen Amru? They were the ones that said that a karpaf more than betzatayim that does not have a house in it, you're not allowed to carry within it. So therefore, and then they were the same ones that said, you're not allowed to carry from a Reshut Yachid to a Carmelit. Okay? So therefore, what's happening? In order to be non-metaltel and reshut yachid to reshut rabim. So therefore, they said a reshut yachid gedolah more than a betzatayim is going to be a problem. Okay, but if it's going to be a betzatayim, which you are allowed to come and to carry wherever you want, so now the rabbis came and they prohibited it. Okay, so since the rabbis were the ones that came and prohibited it, they themselves were able to permit it as well later on. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to come and ask the question, Umay Shna. What's the difference between the two gezerot that Chachamim come and they say that now there's no isur of being metaltel from the karpaf to the karmelit? So it says the Gemara like this: Tocho shchiach, mitocho liyam, minayom latocho lo shchiach. To carry within the karpaf is normal; it's common. So since it's common, right, they came and therefore they said they made their decrees, right, because they were afraid that people, the onlookers, would come and say, you're allowed to carry whatever you want, from a karmelit to another place, to this, or that, no problem. But to carry from the yam letochol yam, which means from the sea to the stone, or the stone to the sea, lo shchiach, it's not common. And therefore the rabbis permitted it, which means that the rabbis only permitted things which were not common, so that way people will not make a mistake. But if it was common and then people are going to learn from it and they're going to start making mistakes, that's when they made the decrees. Okay? Fine. Hau Yenuka. It was a child. Next picture. Okay? Hau Yenuka di shtapi chamime. That basically what happened is that the 8th day, right? That's what it says here. Shechal yom hashmini l'to b'Shabbat. And what happened was, nishpechu b'Shabbat amayim chamim, right? Now what happened was all the hot water was poured out. Now usually they needed the hot water for the Brit Milah. So here look, Yenuka. Yenuka means a child. This is the house of a child. They're inside the Chatzer. Yeah, so this is a child, the baby. I think even if you look closely, this is a baby's crib. You know, how do you call that thing? The baby's, the carriage.
The poussette, la poussette.
Yeah, the bassinet. Yeah, it's over here in the back. You see the bassinet in the back? Through the window. Yeah, they did it purposely.
No, le landau, pas la poussette. Landau.
A landau, okay. But in English, I think it's bassinet, no?
Yes, it's bassinet. Yeah. Bassinet is a French word.
French word, okay.
Bassinet.
A bassinet, okay.
The bassin.
So it says over here, so this is the child. Now here you have the hot water. Look here, they made the urn. If you look in the window, you look at my cursor. My cursor, chamime, this is the urn of the hot water. So it's spilled out. And all of a sudden now there's no more hot water in order to do the Brit Milah. Yeah? We just spoke about Brit Milah this morning, no? In the halachot, with Mansur. So he says here, Amalehu Rabba. So Rabba comes and he says, right? Naitu lechamim emigo betai. Bring hot water from within the house that was inside the chatzer. So Amale Abaye said to Rabba, 1 second, we didn't make an eruv. If we didn't make an eruv, you can't carry from the chatzer, from the house to the chatzer. Meaning, in this courtyard, you would have to make eruv chatzerot. If they did not make eruv chatzerot, you cannot carry from this house outside, or from this house outside, or from this house outside. You can't do it. So what are you going to do? So Amalei.
Roof. On the roof.
I can't hear you.
On the roof. On the
So,
roof.
so he says, Amalei, he comes and he says, Nismo chashituf. We are going to do shitufe mevoot, which means here in the picture, remember, this is the mavui. You see the middle part. This is the wall of one chatzer. This is one courtyard. And this is the wall of this is another courtyard. Here's the wall of the other courtyard. In the middle between them is a mavui. So therefore, he says, why don't we be somech on the shituf mevoot?
Which shouldn't be any problem.
Yeah, which means that if they connected the mavuim, the mavuis together through shitufei mevoot, we could just Amalei. He said, "Halo shatina." We didn't do that either. There was no shituf mevoot. So says the Gemara, ask a goy. What's the problem? Get a goy to bring hot water. A goy is allowed to bring hot water. Okay. So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye says, Bay le'tve lemor velo shevkan Rav Yosef. I wanted to ask on more, right? But Rav Yosef did not give me the permission. Amar Rav Yosef Rav Kana says we said Rav Kana. Kevim Rav Yehuda v'Amarlan. When we were by Rav Yehuda, he told us this. B'deoraita motfinan tiyuvta v'hada Rav Dina maaseh. That any time that it's going to be to do with a din deoraita, the students could ask a question. And what happened was that first of all, they ask, and then they do a maaseh, right? In order to make sure that they're not going to transgress a doraita. However, though, when we're talking about a derabanan, avdina maaseh v'hadar motfinan tiyuvta. When it's to do with rabbinical prohibitions, first you do the action, and then you start asking all your questions. You understand? Meaning, when it's to do with doraita, right? You don't do anything until you ask and you're mevarer the halacha well. And then you find out, was it permitted or prohibited? When it's the Rabbanan, the second the rabbi tells you, do it. Afterwards, ask the rabbi his questions. Afterwards. But first you do it. Okay? So, levatar hachi, amarle, after that he told him, my bailino, what did you want to ask? Amarle, he says, the Tanya we learned in the Braita, haza'ah shevut, v'amila lenochri shevut. He says, when you're going to sprinkle the waters of the chatat on a tamemet, that in itself is a shvut, right? And also, amira legoy is shvut, meaning telling a goy is also going to be a shvut. This is the Rabbanan. So therefore, I should equate both of them together. Masechet Amud Aleph 68a1. Ma hazah shvut ve'ena dochat Shabbat. Just like hazah is shvut and doesn't push off Shabbat, so to amira legoy is a shvut and he shouldn't push off the Shabbat. So Amalei, he answered him, didn't I told you that there's a difference between a shvut that has an action and a shvut that does not have an action? Meaning, telling a goy, right? It says in an Isur D'Rabbanan of telling a goy that does not have an action. Meaning, if right now, right, to tell a goy to do an action on Shabbat, that's an Isur shvut which is not pushed for a mitzvah. But if it does not have an action, you're allowed to. You didn't tell him to warm up the water. You just told him to bring the water. So therefore, since you only told him to bring the water, you didn't tell him to do any isur doraita of heating up water, of doing an action. Okay?
He's carrying the water in a from one area to another that's ordinarily prohibited.
It's not to the Reshut Rabim, it's not doraita. First of all, you're in a courtyard, or even if it's from the house to the courtyard, it's all the Rabbanans. Even if it was going to be a Carmelit, for example, from one courtyard to another courtyard, or the Carmelit, or the Mavui, but it's not doraita. It's not a Reshut Rabim. The Reshut Rabim is only doraita.
The child is not considered like sick, so that we could heat up water for him.
Very good, very good. 1 minute. You're right. We're going to speak. I don't know if we're going to speak about it, but the halakha does speak about it. But if I remember correctly, though, you have to prepare the water before the Shabbat. You understand? Here we're
Electricity
talking
could have
about.
broke. It could have been, something happened. Honest, who knows?
Okay. No, if I remember correctly, the Shulchan Aruch brings down about heating up water, but that's only on Yom HaShlishi after the Brit Milah, not for the preparations before the Brit Milah. And that's what, if I remember correctly. But it's in Shulchan Aruch. I don't remember if it's in Siman Shin Kaftet, Shin Lamed. It's in Ilchot Shabbat, when it talks about Ilchot Milah b'Shabbat. Okay? So it says here like this. Amale Rabba bar Rav Chanan Abaye, says Rabba Chanan to Abaye, Mevoah. Yeah, Mevoah de it be'tre gavre, ravre kerabanan. When you have a mavui, right, can it be that there's two great chachamim like Rabba, right, and Abaye, ve'lo lave ve'lo eruv lo shituf? Says, I don't understand what's going on. You're going to tell me that you have the Rabba and Abaye, that they were in the same mavui, and nobody did Eruvei Chatzerot, and nobody did Shituf Mevoot? Like, what's going on over here? You understand? You have great rabbis here. Nobody does it? Amalei, he answered, in my Navid, right, what am I going to do? Mor lavorche. Rabba was not normal to do it. It's not his kavod to do such a thing. Ana trine b'gusay, and I was busy learning Torah. Inu lo mashkeche. And other people of the Mavui, they don't pay attention. Diakni lehu pita besala. And if I was going to be makneh to the other people bread in my basket, in order they should do Shituf Mevot, Kevin di ba'elamine, right? If they were asking for me, and I can't be mivater on what I have and give it to them. So if I don't have anything to give it to them, batila shituf. So then the shituf is going to be batel. The time was we learned in the Braita. When you do shituf mevot, if somebody's going to come and ask to borrow wine or oil, and you don't give it to them, the entire shituf mevot is batel. So therefore, even if I would have come and acquired it to them, if they would have asked me for something, I wouldn't be able to give it to them because I don't have enough. So since I don't have enough, the entire shituf mevot is going to be batel. So ask the Gemara, v'nikne lo more reviata dechala bechavita. Says, why don't you just acquire from him a revit of chometz, right? The revit of 86 cc of vinegar. Yeah, and that's it for the mevui of the entire year. You could have for sure done that. So he says, Tanya, you cannot make a shituf mevot with something which is put in a notzar, in a storage place, right? So says the Gemara, we said that you could. So says, Amar Rav Oshi, I says, look, there's another question. Ha-bet Shammai, ha-bet Hillel. Bet Shammai says, embreda, and therefore you cannot do that lechatchila, right? However, though Bet Hillel says that you can do that. The Tanam, we learned in a Mishnah, hamet babayit velo petachim arbeh. What happens if you have a dead person in the house and there's a lot of entrances, right, to go out? Kulant mean all the kelim are going to be tameh. Niftach echamen, however, if one of them are opened, yeah, ahu tameh, that one is tameh, and all the rest is going to be tahor. Chishav lotio bechamen, if you thought of taking it out of one of the entrances, or bechalon sheishvar ba'arba'a, or through a window that has 4x4 tvachim, yeah, matzila kosher ptachim kulan, then you saved all the other entrances. Bet Shammai says, but that's only if you thought about it before the person passed away. Bet Hillel says, no, even after the person passed away, you could still think about it. So that's the concept of the breira and the aim breira. According to Bet Shammai, there's no breira. According to Bet Hillel, there is breira. The concept here of breira is saying that now that I've shown my mind of what I want to do or not, so therefore that's actually going to come and going to show you exactly what you're supposed to do or not, meaning that you're going to purify all the other entrances. Fine. How yunuka dishtapu chamimeh. Yeah. So again, there was a child that again the hot water was poured out. Amar leu Rava, says Rava, nishayle leime. No, there's no picture yet. So it says, Nishale leime itzricha, right? So let's ask the yoledet, if she needs hot water, nachem lenochre agavimeh. So this is similar to what Richard was saying, but not because of the child, because of the mother. Meaning the mother, you're allowed to be mechalel Shabbat for the mother if she really needs. Now, if she needs hot water, get a goy to heat up water for the how do you call it? Get the goy to heat up water for the mother. And now that you have the water heating up for the water, now you have the goy heating up the water for the mother, derech agav, heat up for the baby as well. Says Masechet Rava, ime ka'ach la tamre. Which means that the mother is eating dates, which means that she's 100% healthy, right? If she's healthy enough in order to eat something cold like dates, it means that she doesn't need hot water. So he said, I would just say, Stamilafon, she was gonna start passing out, and she doesn't know what she's eating. But really, Bemet, she's still sick.
No, the fact that she's eating the dates doesn't mean that she's recuperated, meaning that she's taking also something to recuperate.
I don't know. Here it says, "Emor stami lafona chazba ve'eno yoda ma hi ochelet, aval olam chola hi adayin." Right? No, for sure. That's what I'm saying. But it's a kavanah that she doesn't even know what she's eating. I mean, she's still sick. She's 100% sick.
It's not the fact that she's eating the day
that she's okay,
healthy. She doesn't need the water. No,
she still needs the water, but she doesn't know what she's doing. I don't know what it means here when it says stam ilafon. Rashi. I don't know what it is. Ishtar dishun. I don't know.
It doesn't explain to you there.
No, it just says Rashi al pi sefer otzala ze Rashi. But it says ilafon. Stam ilafon achazba. Ve'ene yudam ma hi ochelet. Maybe stam, she's like gone, that she doesn't even know what she's eating anymore. Okay, fine. Next, how you know Yenuka? Yeah. So he says there was another story now of a child, right? That again, the hot water was poured out. So Amar lehu Rava comes and he says, Panu limani me begavre lebenashe. Interesting. He's saying, take all the utensils that I have in the men's chambers, which is on the outside, which is open to the chatzer, and put it to the inside.
There's a picture in the art scroll that shows a really nice picture in art scroll. Do you have it there, Rabbi? Mine has a picture for the men's quarters, women's quarters, child's quarters.
Yes, so you have it right in front of you, Richard. Look at your screen.
I don't see men's quarters in it.
Right here. Be gavre, be benashe. This is the men's quarters. The men's quarters is usually opened to the chatzer. This is the women's quarters, which is not open to the chatzer. And this is where the baby is. Again, remember, this is the bassinet, the baby. The hot water, which was right here, was poured out, right? So what happened now? And this is one courtyard. It's open to the other courtyard here. This is the men's chambers and the women's chambers. But you're right. I'm actually looking at the art scroll. You also have a picture there, but it's the same thing. Same picture. Okay? More or less, obviously. So what happened? So he said, and then I'm going to go there in the Chadarim Pnimim, right, until Tzeta Shabbat, in order that they're not going to make a mistake. And then I'm going to be Mvatel the Chatzer. So if he's going to be Mvatel the Chatzer, and this was a question that they asked originally, why didn't we do this in the original case? Be Mvatel the Chatzer. Once you're Mvatel the Chatzer, they could carry from that one to the other one. So Amale Ravina Lerava, Vamar Shmuel, and Bitul Reshu Chatzer Chatzer. I thought you're not allowed to do that. You can't be Mvatel from one Chatzer. Again, this is one Chatzer. Look at my picture. One Chatzer, another Chatzer. You cannot be Mvatel from one Reshut to another Reshut, from one Chatzer to another Chatzer. So Amalei, he says, Anak Rabbi Yochanan, so I hold like Rabbi Yochanan that he says that there is bitul mechatzer lechatzer. So says the Gemara, V'lo savale Shmuel k'Shmuel. I thought you hold like Shmuel, right? That means if you don't hold, right? Imena Rav Sovek that Shmuel. Why did you have to start putting the things from one, like from the men's chambers to the women's chambers? Masechet Eruvin Daf 68b. Native Mar betuchta, just stay in the same place. And just be mvatel. And then he's going to come and he's going to mevatel to you. The Amar Rav, as Rav says, mevatlin v'chozim mevatlin. You're allowed to mevatel and then again mevatel, which means I could be mevatel my reshut to you. You would be able to carry. Then you would be able to mevatel your reshut to me, and then I would be able to carry. So we're allowed to do that. We take turns in Vatel Reshut. Capish? You understand what's going on or not? That means each one could be Vatel as Reshut to the other one for a little bit of time, and then they could use the full usage without any problems. So answers the Gemara, Ana behaj b'Shmuel Sfirlev. No, this I hold like Shmuel, Tamar em vativ v'chozem vativ. Meaning, I do hold you're allowed to be vatel like Rabbi Yochanan from one chatzer to another chatzer, but I do not hold like Shmuel that you could be vatel and take turns. Meaning, right now I'm going to be vatel to Richard Moore that lives right beside me, and now he's going to be able to carry from one place to another. And then Richard in 20 minutes is giving vatel his reshut to me, and then I'm going to start being able to be carrying from one place to another. It just doesn't work. Yeah, he doesn't hold on that. Okay? So says the Gemara, Velav Chatamahu, but it's all the same reasoning. Meaning the concept of not making an eruv from one chatzer to another chatzer, and the concept of em vatzin chozim vatzin is the same thing. La mishum dekem the b'adar reshut is talek le'me'achal agav, isn't it because that once he's going to be vatel his reshut, he's completely removing himself from there. Ve'avle yitzayka ben chatzer acheret, ve'em bitul reshut mechatzer lechatzer. So mar nami nivtal, right? You also did it. So says the Gemara, no, hatam, the reason why is says no. He says the reasoning why we do not want to be mvatel vechozer mvatel is because then the words of the rabbis look like a joke. Meaning, for me to be mvatel from one chatzer to another chatzer, that's okay. But if I'm going to start playing games that I'm being mvatel to Richard Moore that lives right beside my house, and then Richard's been mvatel to me, and we continue playing games like that, the words of the rabbis look like a joke. So for that doesn't work. Capish? Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Gufa, Rav Amar, Rav says, you're allowed to mevatel vechozer mevatel. Shmuel says, you're not allowed to. Lema Rav Shmuel, why don't we just say that this achlok between Rav and Shmuel is a brukta de Rabbanan Eliezer kami palgeh. It's the same achlok between Rabbanan and Eliezer. The Rav, the Amar Kerabanan, because Rav holds like the rabbis, Shmuel says like Rabbi Eliezer, and Shmuel says like Rabbi Eliezer. So Amalecha Rav is going to say, no, I could even go according to Rabbi Eliezer. Akan lo kamar Rabbi Eliezer, when did Rabbi Eliezer say the halacha over there? Hamvatel reshut chatzer or reshut beto bitel, yishum de bebait below chatzer lo dayin shei. He says, but if a person is going to batel his reshut, right, the reshut of his chatzer, but he's also going to batel his house, because a house without a chatzer, nobody lives. Meaning nobody lives in a house without any type of a courtyard. You need a type of a courtyard. Okay? So he says, but to do with removing yourself, Miyamar, does he say such a thing? At the end of the day, you remove yourself from it. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel is going to tell you, I hold like even like the rabbis. Until there, here the rabbis didn't say it like over there. Whatever they annulled, whatever they didn't know. Whatever he did annul, for sure, right? It's going to be mistalek legamre, right? So therefore, it comes out that the chachamim are going to be modeh that somebody that's going to be vatel reshuto in the chatzer, he cannot be again, be vatel again. Okay, so Amar Rav Acha bar Chana, Rav Sheshat says Rav Acha bar Chana name Rav Sheshat ketanai. Really, behemet, it's a machloket tanaim. It's machloket Rav and Shmuel. Mi shenatan reshuto veotzi ben meshogeg ben mezid. Somebody that forgot to make an eruv with his chatzer, and he was mevatel his reshut on Shabbat to other people. Veotzi, and then he took something out, whether it's shogeg or mezid, or said again, he's going to prohibit on everybody to be metaltel. These are the words that Rabbi mean. Yehuda says, "B'mezid is oseh, shogeg and oseh," which means like this: when I annul my reshut, it means that I'm not allowed to carry anymore. If I, after 5 minutes, then come out again and I carry, so then that's it. It doesn't help anymore, because what happened was that I just showed that that I wasn't mevatel my reshut because I'm still carrying. So it says the next opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, he said, no, that's only if you did it b'mezid. If you did it by accident, it's okay. So it says the Gemara, this is not a machlok between them. The more savar mevatim v'chozrim mevatim, that you could be mevatel, chozem mevatel, u'mor savar em mevatim, chozrim mevatim, right? And that's a machlok between them. So Amar Rav Acha bar Tachlim Mishra Rava, no, that's not a machlok between them. According to everybody, you cannot be mevatel, chozem mevatel like Shemuel. Here machlok is, do you make a knas, a penalty, by accident because of the mezid? More savar kansu shogeg mezid, more savar, basically we have a machlok. Do you do that? And by the way, that's like all of Masechet Shabbat. A lot of Masechet Shabbat, there was the same machlok between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, are you kones? You make a knas shogeg mizi. You cooked by accident. Do I make a knas that even though you cooked by accident, you're not allowed to do it just like on purpose or not? So Ravashi comes and he says, Rav and Shmuel, no, it is a machlok, the same machlok that we just mentioned before. Okay, between Rav and Shmuel and Rav Gamliel. So he says, Amar Rav Gamliel says, Rav Gamliel, Maaseh betzeduki echad sheyad dar imanu. There was a story with a tzeduki that he was living with us in a mavui, right? And then what happened is that they told him to take out all the kelim before the tzeduki does in order that we are going to take charge. And we are the ones in charge, then you're allowed to carry within it. So says the Gemara, Tzeduki man, who's speaking about a Tzeduki now? The Sadducees, the ones that only believe in Torah Shebichtav. Who's talking about them now? So says the Gemara, you're right. We're lacking part of the Mishnah. This is what it meant to say. Tzeduki is like a goy, right? But Rabbi Gamliel says Tzeduki is not like a goy. It says Rabbi Gamliel, there was a story with a Tzeduki Echad that was living with us. Right. Well, I guess
from Sadukim, the ones that they were half converted and they were living in Israel after they were get out from Babylon at that time, right?
Some of them, but not exactly, because remember that there's a concept of tzadok ubaitus. There were two people that we learned in that's where they got the tzadukim and baitusim. These people, what happened is that they didn't do proper shimush, and then what happened is that they started a new sect in Judaism that since they didn't have Mesoret, remember that everything is a Mesoret, right? That's why it says Gadol Shimusha Yotem Limudah. You could have, and by the way, you should know that's the concept of Shimush Tamidei Chachamim, or I've seen it also, right? You could have people that they try to go to by the book. If they don't do Shimush, they are clueless. What's
that word mean, Shimush?
Shimush means that you have to serve them. You have to serve them. You have to be by people. That's why, for example, you want to be a mohel, right? You want to be a shochet. It's not just enough to learn the halachot, right? You have to be there. You have to see it. You have to feel it. You have to see what happens in every scenario. That's why a lot of times people say, I've learned more by the actions of my rabbi more than what I've learned in the learning of the rabbi. Because learning, you can learn from a book, but you'll never learn shimush by a book. You'll never learn how to do it. You understand? And that, by the way, you should know, is what the concept is of always asking Rabbanim. You understand? You could learn through books, but if you don't know what the shimush is, you're lost. Whether it's in minagim, whether it's in halachot, whether it's in practicality, whether it's in everything. Yeah, I just actually had a case yesterday. I had a case yesterday where I'm doing a ketubah for someone, right? I'm writing in the ketubah to make sure for their wedding. What happened is that they went and the name is a few different, there's three names, right? It's Yaakov, Ben Sion, Mordechai. So I went and I sent it to a rabbi and I told him, listen, here, right, can you please look over the ketubah? Because I just want to make sure that it's 100% correct. You don't want any mistakes or something that, you understand? If not, think about it. People could come, they could write whatever ketubah that they want. They go to the wedding, and then nobody's going to find out. When's the next time that they're going to take out a ketubah? You understand? But if the ketubah is pasul, it's a big problem. So one of the rabbis came and he told me, Ben Sion, you have to write a makaf. A makaf is like a line, joining them together, right? I looked up in different sfarim. It was said that you don't do that. So I was very puzzled. What's going on? I sent it, right, to another rabbi. Yeah, I sent it to my rabbi, Rav Asayag. So Rav Asayag told me, no, he says that the minhag until today in all the Batei Dinim, whether it is in Gitin, right now, I know that Rav Asayag, he does Gitin, right? So therefore I know that he knows more than the other rabbi. That's why I sent it to somebody superior. And he told me that the minhag until today is that Ben Sion is written without a makaf, but the Sofrim, what they do is that they make the spacing much smaller between Ben Sion and between the other names. So he told me you can't do that on a computer, obviously, but, right, that's the way to do it. I went and I said to myself, right, I said, I'm going to accept upon myself the challenge. What can you not do on a computer nowadays? Yeah? What can you not do?
Can make it,
not even Photoshop. In Microsoft Word itself, you could change the spacing between the letters. And the spacing between, there's called spacing between characters and spacing between the actual spaces. So I went, and I could show you afterwards the ketubah between Yaakov and Ben Zion. There's a bigger space. It's 100% scale. And then between Ben Zion, I put a 50% scale. And then between Zion and Mordechai, again, you have 100% scale. And that's what I did by each one. And then I sent it to my rabbi back, and I told him, I said, Baruch Hashem, nowadays, even on computers, you could do that. But now that I know the halacha, now I know what to do. You understand? But that's only because you do the shimush and you ask and you find out. Because if you're just going to look in a book, right? I checked the Sefer on names, which is called Talumot Lev. Yeah, and there it had Ben Zion as 2 different words. It didn't have 1 word, but it didn't say to Makaf either. I checked another place also. It just said 2 words, but it didn't tell you this concept of the minhag of what you're supposed to do nowadays of the sofrim. So that I was told what to do, and then you follow suit. So that's called shimush. Shimush means you have to learn by practice, by learning, not just by a book, right? You could be a big Talmid Chacham by learning a lot from a book, but then in practicality, you're the biggest Sama'aretz. Okay? Very important. Fine. So the Sadducees, they were a group of people that basically, they went and they only held the Torah Shebichtav and not Torah Shebal Peh. Okay, so V'amar Rav Gamliel, Masechet Eruvin Daf was a story of a Sadducee that he was living with us in Yerushalayim. And my Abba said, quickly take out all the kelim in the mavui, all the utensils in the mavui. Until he's going to take it out, and then you're not going to be able to carry within it. So says the Gemara, Tanya, we learned in the Braita, if you're going to live, whether it's with a goy or a Sadducee or a Baitusim, remember that Siddukim and Baitusim were the same thing. They do prohibit it, right? Okay, we have to skip out those brackets. Says the man after his children, Banai, my children, quickly take out the things. Until this toev, this abomination, that Tzedoki is going to come and yesor lechem. Sharei bitel reshuto lachem. These words are mean. Rabbi Yehuda says another way. Maru asu tzorchechem b'mavui. Do what are your necessities in the mavui. Ad shelo techshach, until it doesn't become nighttime. Yesor lechem, then it's going to become prohibited. So Amar more says, Hotziu ma shetem hotziin v'chliu ma shetem machzim ma shetem toev hazeh yesor lechem, until this abomination doesn't come and takes it out. The memra dechimav keinu v'hadar ma pikihu lo asari says what? If they take it out, then afterwards he takes it out, it's not going to prohibit. It should be the same thing. At the end of the day, he's also taking out things in his property. Samechet Amud Aleph 69a. So he says, "Vatram we learned on the Mishnah. Mishnah natan reshuto ve'otzi ben shogim mezid." The second that if I give over my property, but then afterwards I take something out, whether shogeg or mezid, says Rabbi Meir, that's it. So Rav Yosef emayeno, so you have to say no, that it's not going to prohibit it, and then there's going to be other answers. So Bezrat Hashem, we continue tomorrow. Bezrat Hashem with the next Daf.